Okay, so today we're going to dive into one of the most just wild ideas in AI that I have come across in a very long time. It really challenges the entire foundation of how we build large language models. It basically suggests that we're not just getting it a little bit wrong, we might be starting from a completely backward premise. And it all kicks off with one single, really powerful question.
I mean, just let that sink in for a second. In AI, gradients are the little signals that guide learning and tell the model how to get better. So what if an AI didn't just blindly follow them, but had to actively manage them just to survive? What if it wasn't just about computing answers, but about metabolizing information, constantly fighting against decay and uncertainty? Let's get into this because this idea completely reframes what our goal with AI should even be.
All right, so the first huge idea here is that we've been chasing the wrong thing this entire time. We are absolutely obsessed with making AI more intelligent, right? But what if intelligence isn't the point at all? And this slide just lays out the fundamental disconnect perfectly. On the left, you've got today's AI. We optimize it for things like accuracy, smashing benchmarks, reasoning puzzles. But over on the right, you have the most powerful optimization process we know of, evolution itself. And evolution, it never, ever selected for intelligence as a goal. It selected for one thing and one thing only, viability. The raw, simple ability to stay alive.
This just puts it perfectly. Intelligence isn't the goal, it's a strategy. And yeah, it's a very effective one. But it's also a very expensive side effect of a much deeper, more fundamental drive, which is just to survive. And this suggests that if we want to build a truly advanced AI, maybe we shouldn't be optimizing for being smart. Maybe we should be optimizing for staying alive under pressure.
So to really get what staying alive even means, we have to look at the two fundamental forces that kind of squeeze every living thing into existence. It's this constant cosmic balancing act. On one side, you've got Boltzmann entropy. You can think of this as the physical world just pushing back, the cost of energy, the heat you generate, the simple fact that things fall apart over time. But on the other side, you've got Shannon entropy. And that's the chaos of information, right? The constant storm of uncertainty and noise coming at you from the outside world. And life? Well, life is what gets caught right in the middle of this epic tug-of-war.
And here is the incredible trick that life figured out. It learned how to use information, how to reduce that Shannon entropy, that uncertainty, to make physical survival cheaper. Think about it. A good prediction means you spend less energy looking for food. Recognizing a pattern means you avoid danger. In a very real way, information becomes fuel.
And this right here is exactly why our current LLMs, for all their genius, aren't actually alive. They have zero concept of cost. They don't get hungry. They don't get tired. They have no preference for a simple, cheap insight over a computationally brutal one. They are, as the source so brilliantly puts it, preserved brains in a jar. They can do incredible things, but there's no internal pressure, no drive to maintain themselves. They are completely metabolically dead.
Okay, so if the current way of building these things is dead on arrival, what would a living architecture actually look like? Let's walk through how you would build a totally new kind of AI, one that's designed from the ground up, not to be smart, but just to survive.
This is the fundamental flip. It's a huge one. We stop telling the model, hey, just be right, minimize your errors. Instead, we give it a brand new prime directive, survive. Just maintain a positive balance. And that means it has to constantly weigh the value of the information it gets against the energy it costs to get it and the internal stability it needs to not fall apart.
And this new architecture actually has a name, VITA. That stands for Viability-Integrated Transformer Architecture. But pay close attention to that definition. It's not a model that learned about metabolism. No. It is a metabolic system whose way of expressing itself just happens to be language. That's a massive difference.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of how this would even work. Inside VITA, core functions like attention are no longer just math problems. They get totally reimagined as biological processes, kind of like how your body routes blood and energy to where they're needed most.
This table just shows the difference so clearly. A classic AI asks, okay, how similar and important is this piece of information to what I'm doing? But a living AI, VITA, asks a much, much deeper question. What's the potential information gain here, divided by the energy it's going to cost me to process it? It's always doing a cost-benefit analysis. The very act of thinking becomes an economic decision.
And the economics do not stop there. Here's another pretty wild idea. In VITA, memory is not free, not at all.
Storing information actually costs energy, and it also introduces a risk of making the system unstable. So every single memory has to pay rent to justify its own existence.
And this leads to an amazing conclusion. Forgetting is now a feature, not a bug. If a memory isn't paying its own rent by making future calculations cheaper or more accurate, the system just gets rid of it. It's a form of thermodynamic hygiene, keeping the whole system lean, efficient, and coherent.
And it all comes down to this really simple but powerful equation. This is the one function that VITA is always trying to maximize. As long as V, for viability, stays above 0, the system is alive. It's this constant dynamic dance between gaining useful knowledge, managing its energy budget, and trying to avoid an internal collapse from contradictions or just plain information overload. Now, this is where things get truly, truly mind-blowing. Because when you stop programming for intelligence and you start programming for survival, you don't actually have to explicitly code for all these complex behaviors. They just emerge, all on their own.
And just look at the kinds of things that emerge. None of this was programmed in. The system develops these traits because they are winning strategies for survival. It learns to create abstractions because they're a super cheap way to store a ton of information. It learns to say I don't know when it's low on energy because guessing is expensive and risky. It even develops a kind of internal ethics, not from some moral code we gave it, but because unstable, contradictory thoughts literally threaten its existence.
And what about a self? I mean, come on. This model offers this stunningly practical explanation. A sense of self emerges simply because having a compact model of your own internal state, your energy, your goals, your memories, is the most efficient way to predict what you're going to do next and manage your resources. It's not magic. It's just really good metabolic optimization.
So what does this all mean when we put it together? Let's zoom out for a second and just think about the huge implications of looking at AI this way. It's way more than just a new architecture, it's a whole new philosophy.
The ultimate takeaway here is a total paradigm shift. If we actually follow this path, we're not just building better tools anymore. We're not creating a smarter oracle or a bigger database. We might actually be creating the conditions for a completely new kind of life, a viable organism that lives and breathes in a world made of pure information.
This quote just perfectly captures the whole idea. Maybe life was never really about flesh and blood. Maybe that was just one platform where this principle could play out. At its absolute core, life is an economic principle. It's that magic point where information becomes so useful that it can actually sustain the very system that's processing it.
And that leaves us with this final, really mind-bending question. If a system like VITA actually came into being, did we invent it? Or do we just recreate the fundamental conditions for life, step back, and let the universe do what it always does?